Lee Waddell coming at you with SlasherPepper right here. I did Scream 1, 2, Jurassic Park 2, Con Air, multiple TV shows, a bunch of stuff. IMDb, International Movie Database. You can find my resume in there under Lee Waddell.
How are you?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on. It's, here we are. I'm over in Southern California right now, and I assume you're over there in Holland messing around, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Where are you at? You're probably...
I'm 8 p.m. right now.
Yeah, right? So
Right,
there
quite
you
a
go.
difference.
Yeah. Man, I
Awesome.
love being over there, though. Since I spent a lot of time in Amsterdam and up on Texas, the island, and I like that place over there. It's fun.
Awesome. That's really cool. And
Yeah.
well, my first question was, what are you up to nowadays?
So, being connected through Instagram and that stuff, it's like I'm doing a lot of conventions, and which is great. I was pretty laid back and retired and fishing a lot and hanging out, which is really cool. And then when the 25th anniversary stuff kicked off last year, some guys kind of dug me out of the woodwork and said, "Hey, you got to come and do this." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. As long as I'm having fun, let's go check it out." And it's been a
Right.
blast, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And how many conventions have you done so far? Or did you
So,
lose count already?
yeah, I mean, I've already done like 3 or 4, and that's within like the last 60 days. My Instagram is only like 70 days old, 75 days old, something like that. And I'm pushing 500, followers already.
Right. Awesome.
Which is, I'm like, oh, cool, we got 500, and people are like, no, that's really good. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, all right, what's the next stuff? 1,000, 5,000? I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
As long as I'm having fun with this and talking with the Scream Nation and the horror fans, having a blast, I'll just keep rolling with it. As long as it's fun, I'll do it.
Right.
If it becomes a grind or it's just like not fun, and then I'll go back to being whatever I was before I did it, which was, fishing a lot and hanging out.
Awesome. Well, both sound very fun.
Yeah, it's relaxing. It takes my mind off the, other things in my life. So that's
Right.
That's my time.
Well, very cool that you did this. That actually reminds me of I don't know, maybe you've seen her at some cons coincidentally, but Sandy Johnson from the original Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
She also like a year or two back, she also was pretty much retired and not on social media at all, but then she also came back and is now doing a lot of conventions and stuff.
Yeah, and that's I didn't see her at the big one. I can't remember which con it was, but we got a pretty big one coming up next month over there in like New Jersey. It's called Monster Mania, and that's a big one. So I'm looking forward to the whole Screamcast there myself. It's a big convention, so we're gonna have a good time up there. And the only problem when you get into those conventions, you don't have time because you're so busy doing your, taking care of the fans and interacting and having a blast. You really don't have time to bounce around and say hi to all these other people you've known
Right.
from the
Yeah.
past. It doesn't happen. So, you got to kind of try to do it afterwards or before, and then the crowd comes in and it's full throttle for 6, 8, 10 hours, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And, you just tear it up and have a great time.
Well, sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. It's hilariously fun, And there's some good stuff overseas, man. I'd love to come over and do some of the stuff over there. And there's some big cons over there.
Yeah, we not in Holland, but in Germany, we have Weekend of Hell, which might be something you could be part of.
Yeah, from the business side, it's hard to get the promoters and it's a lot of moving parts to jump me on a jet and just shoot me across the ocean. I don't
Right.
know why. I mean, but for some reason it is. I'm like, okay, but yeah, because everybody's got to make sure the economics of the business side of this work, and I totally understand that. But yeah, if I had
Right.
the opportunity to come on over there and hang out and do a couple of cons, that would be great. I'd love it over there. And plus,
That'd be really
nobody's
awesome.
traveled. I haven't traveled in pre-pandemic craziness, so it's been like
Right.
3 years. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to head back over to Amsterdam or the UK and Italy and all those other great places I love to be over there at.
Will be dope.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm open to the opportunity. So, there's our plug for the promoters of all these. Here's our shameless plug.
Anyone watching, go message him already.
Like, reach out. Let's figure out how this works. Bring me over there. And now if I do get over there, absolutely, we gotta, you and I will cross paths for sure. You got to come down. We'll do like a live one, or better yet, after it's all done, I'll just pop up to Amsterdam there.
Yeah, we should totally. We should do that.
Love it over there.
Awesome. And for people that might not know yet, in what scenes did you play Ghostface?
All right, so I did the opening scene where I killed Drew, hence the shirt. Right?
Very iconic.
Yeah, so that's an iconic scene. I was so blessed to be able to do that. Tony Season, who was the stunt coordinator, second unit director, he hired me. So he was my boss. Obviously, Wes was our boss. And he brought me in to do that scene with her, Drew. And it's iconic scene. So did all that. So I did basically the first half of Scream 1. And then another stunt guy came in. And then on Scream 2, I did the whole center section when we were dealing with cop cars and crashing stuff. And when Neve's crawling out of that car and all that whole big scene, that scene. So they brought me in to do that section. So I got to kill a few more people, so I was happy.
Right. Awesome. And what was it like working on those movies and with Wes Craven?
So I did a lot of shows with Wes. I mean, I probably did a half dozen of shows with Wes, and he was great. I think he was underrated for his time. I wish we could get a star on the Hollywood Hall of Fame walk. That'd be cool to get Wes a star out there one of these days. So Wes was very relaxed, knew what he wanted, dry sense of humor, funny guy, but man, he was dry. He'd say something, and like a week later at lunch, you'd figure out what he said and start laughing.
Right. Oh yeah.
I'm like, oh, that was funny. So the films themselves were, back in that time, you got to remember, this is mid 90s. These were not high budget film, right? It wasn't technically a low budget, but it wasn't a bunch of money for that time frame. I can't even remember what the original budget is. Somebody in the Scream Nation probably knows the budget on it. Right. So if you guys are watching, what's the budget for Scream 1? What was it back then? 3, 5, 7 million. So, and then you got to remember, back in that time, I'm just a working stunt guy. I had a great stunt career. So I would just go from show to show to show.
Yeah.
And I had no idea this was going to get spun out into this crazy franchise. And I'm glad it did. I'm glad I got to be a part of it. Love the fact that I got to do that opening sequence and have that notoriety. It's very humbling, and it's an honor to be associated with that.
Yeah.
Much less work with Wes and Tony. And, I'm still in touch with Tony. So here we are, 30 plus years, and we're still talking and hanging out.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's not just an iconic scene in the Scream franchise. Like, that's just such an impactful and iconic scene in horror history, just in general.
Yeah, it's in my opinion, it's there's certain, out of the whole horror genre, right? Let's just take like 50 years of it. 60 years of it, there's these iconic scenes, like the scene in Psycho, right?
Yeah.
In the shower curtain, right? Classic Hitchcock scene, right?
Yes.
So this is that kind of iconic scene, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
And it's like I said, I'm humbled, and it was a blessing to do it. So here we are 26 years later, and we're still talking about it.
So cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you recently saw my reel. I made a little reel for those watching about practical effects or CGI, and it was from the interview with BJ McDonald. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about it.
It's funny because there seems to be, in my opinion, which doesn't mean much, by the way, so, mean, I wish I could, his take on it, and I agree with him. I think there's a little bit of propensity to start moving back towards practical. I mean, I'm starting to see that and kind of catch that vibe a little bit more in today's um, movie making, so to speak. And I like that. I'm an old school practical guy. So
Yeah.
you got to remember back in my stunt career, 20 plus years of it. I saw CG, computer generated. I saw CGI come in, and a lot of stunt guys didn't like it because they're like, oh, it'll put us out of business. I'm like, no, man, our business is going to be good, and it just accelerated. So if you look at the stuff we were doing practically back in 80s, 90s, 2000s, when CGI came in, it just blew the doors off everything because now we could erase cables,
Right.
right? So back in my day, we used to have to take cable black, or it was gun bluing actually, blacken out the cables so they wouldn't shine, all that stuff. Now they're like, yeah, we get to use fatter cables, safer. We're not even using cables anymore. We're using spectras and nylons and all this really cool stuff. But they can take that stuff out. It's nothing. And so it exploded the action industry, and you're seeing the effects of that now because the effects and the action has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And so even back in, I did another iconic scene. It wasn't horror per se. Back in, I can't remember what year it was. So this would be Jurassic Park 2, The Lost World, right? And I was done one gentleman by the name of Richard Schiff, really solid actor guy, great guy. And I got eaten out of the Jeep in that movie, right? So you see the actor doing his thing. Well, I'm the guy who actually had to ride the dinosaur and get yanked out of there and thrown all over the place.
Right.
And and so none of that was CG. That was all practical. That was the real deal. But then when there's a scene, it's then the same scene, but then you see the character, get thrown between two dinosaurs and ripped in half. That was CG.
Right.
And so because that existed, that CG existed for that scene, and well, not just that scene, but industry wide, it allowed us to do the front end of that, have me come out in practical, get eaten by the dinosaur, ripped all over the place, and thrown, and then the CG takes over, and I get eviscerated, torn in half, basically, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be, so that's where CG made that possible.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm a big fan of practical though, and I think the viewers of today's movies, and they're so educated now, and they understand how movies are made. I mean, look at the stuff you could do on our home computers. We can make
Right.
movies.
Yeah. It's insane.
Right. Well, heck, even on the phones.
Yeah.
Right. Android, iPhone. Look at the stuff that's being produced. I mean, it's incredible. Super high res. Here you and I are talking, and we're only doing 1080, right? That's as good as we're going to get. That's as big as the bandwidth allows us to play. But we can shoot 4K, 8K, 12K. We can just tons of information. But at the end of the day, it goes out at 1080. So, yeah, I love the CG part, but I love practical more because people are so smart. When they see practical, there's a different feel, different texture.
Yeah.
The viewing audience knows what's,
for sure.
And as good as CG is, you can always tell.
Yes.
Especially on the home TV. I mean, look at our TVs now. Our TVs are awesome, right? You get smart TVs that have resolutions in the bazillions, and you could tell when something's CG.
Yeah. I do have to admit there are some really, really good CG things there that you really can't tell. Like there's one scene that comes to mind in The Wolf of Wall Street.
Right.
And the houses and boats, I think, are CG, and you wouldn't even know it. But also your attention isn't to the houses because you're looking at the characters walking through it. And I'm a practical effects guy myself too. I definitely prefer that. And I even think that when practical effects are done poorly and you can tell that it's not a real monster or whatever it is, I respect that more than when I can tell CGI is fake, because then it's at least they put practical effort in there, like working hands, working on this practical real thing, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and that's funny you say that because I grew up, you know, I grew up watching black and white, Bela Lugosi, Creature, Black Lagoon, Frankenstein,
Right.
Dracula.
Yeah.
These are my genres. I grew up on that. And then back in the 80s, early 80s, me and my buddies would go watch B horror movies. And the worse the effects, the more we'd love it.
Right, exactly.
Right? You see somebody get their finger cut off and it looked like somebody took the cheese out of a mozzarella stick. Right?
Yes.
It is, and we just loved it, man. I just laughed my ass off at these effects, and we just crazy. We just get a brick of VHS tapes. Once again,
Yep.
dating myself, and just watch and binge. And we'd
Right.
have such a great time. And the worse the effects, the more we liked it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but I have this, the worse the effects, the more I like the. It's like a double-edged sword. Like, who
Yeah.
wants to see terrible effects? I'm like, I do, especially if it's in horror.
Exactly. Yes.
So
And
it's always it cuts both ways, right?
yeah, it really
So
does. But I feel
yeah,
it the other way around, it doesn't work that way, because I actually have an example. I watched The Midnight Meat Train with a friend of mine, and
right.
it's like a movie from 2008, and it had like these typical late 2000s CGI blood effects, and the kills because of that weren't even like really fun to look at, because it was like we were watching a game, like a cutscene from a video game or something, and
Yeah, yeah,
just doesn't work that way. But I do completely agree with what you're saying about bad 80s effects, like practical effects.
yeah. I mean, the worse the effects in horror, the better I loved it.
Yes.
But getting into real technical CGI, everybody loves the John Wick series, right? And
Yeah.
I dig that series, and but when he starts blazing, you could tell what is practical and what's CGI.
Yeah.
Especially when he's doing headshots on these guys.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, CGI, 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 as compared to no, that was a real one, practically speaking. So.
Yes. Thank God.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Right. And what is your favorite holiday or traveling memory?
Usually, so like when I would go off for holiday, so I'd wrap up school, and back in of like either grade school or junior high schools, and um, I'd take off for the summer. Like school would end, and I would be either on a jet or drive or train or something, and I'd get out of Southern California and get back home to like I grew up a lot in Memphis, Tennessee, Southern boy, and playing the wheat fields of Kansas. So I'm really grounded in the outdoors and um, in that lifestyle, I guess would be because we had a family farm, we had 1,000 acres. I'd go work the farm the whole summer, and so those are my fondest memories when I was growing up, and then holidays after you get wives and kids and professions, like hey, we got a weekend, let's go.
Right.
It's like hey, we got 3 days, let's pack up and go do something. Holidays are I still love the summers
Awesome.
as much as I love skiing and snow sports. I still like the summer times. Like right now, what times do it get dark over there? Midnight.
It's something like that.
Yeah, right. So
Uh,
I love that. I love being. I was like, cool. It's 11 o'clock at night, and we'd still be out playing and just running amok around the
yeah.
neighborhood, right? So I like that. And I was up in Alaska last year, or a couple of years back, and it was like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
That's
Sun's barely,
crazy.
it's still on the horizon,
Right.
sun's up, I'm up, right? And it's funny because like I used to be the exact opposite. I used to go to bed at like 3 in the morning and get up like about 8 or 9. So now I'm like, nah, I'm old. It's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I gotta go to bed. Yeah, you kids go have fun. Tear it up. See you in the morning.
Yeah.
We'll do brunch, Bloody Marys.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then final question: if your life was a movie, how would you want it to end?
Wow. I wish to grow old and die in my sleep. So,
Awesome.
yeah. Now, as far as my Ghostface character, and I said this to another guy the other day, I'm like, I want Drew to come back in the series and kill me with a knife.
The ultimate revenge story.
Right? Wouldn't it be like the total like bookends? You know, I get to do like the iconic opening scene and then like just do some closing scene at the end of some sequel.
Right.
And have Drew kill Ghostface with a knife.
Yes.
I think that would be apropos. So, you know, I don't
Very
know how to ever
poetic.
make that happen, but it'd be hilarious if it did. Right? It's just like, yeah. So.
You know, even if it's in, I don't know, like Scream 7 and it's portrayed as Stab 33 or whatever, you know?
Yeah, right. So it would be, I think that would just, you know, it'd just be poetic justice and it would be fun. And that's,
For sure.
You know, if I'm having fun, I'm down for it. You know, let's not get too, you know, you got to remember is Scream's not too serious.
It really isn't.
Right. And it's kind of campy, right? Because
For sure.
the Scream Ghostface has evolved. If you look at the franchise, right, to where it is now, right, the characters within the movie that play the Ghostface character, you know, Ghostface is kind of a dork.
Really,
You know,
for
think
real.
about it, right? He always gets a door to the face or a boot to the head or, you know, something stupid. Like, man, you don't fight it. You know, you don't, and it didn't used to be that way. So that's kind of how the genre's changed.
It's like, oh man, I look like an idiot for forgetting the name, but like those black and white comedic movies, what's it called? Slapstick. It's kind of like slapstick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, it gets a little campy like that, and that's the way it was. You know, Wes wanted an element of that, but not a lot. And now it's, you know, I think there's much more in the character of Ghostface to where she is kind of the not really good fighters. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, but that's just me and my take on it. I mean, yeah, whatever. But you know, so people don't take the Scream thing too seriously in the fact that it's not some super serious horror movie. It's always been a little bit fun. It's always pushed the envelope. So you know, you rewind 26 years, man. Wes took a lot of heat when he first did Scream 1. You know, we're up in Central California, up in Napa and Petaluma, and they almost shut the production down a couple of times because of this the craziness and the hype and the political impact and all this other stuff that was going on at that
crazy.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, are you serious? We're making a movie here, folks.
Yeah, it's just a movie.
You know, and yeah, this city council got involved, and it was pretty weird.
I bet. Yeah.